A single encounter at a cemetery will unravel secrets, hidden truths, and a granddaughter no one knew existed. Watch as justice, courage, and love collide in ways that will shock an entire family. This is the story of Sophia, Maya, and Victoria. The cemetery was quiet, the kind of silence that pressed against the chest and made every footstep seem louder than it had any right to be. Victoria Whitmore stood stiffly before the white marble gravestone of her late son, Michael, her perfectly tailored heels pressing into the dew-soaked grass. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faint scent of chrysanthemums, but Victoria's mind was far from the beauty around her. She was focused, as always, on maintaining control, even in grief. Her sharp eyes scanned the perimeter, and for a moment, she thought she was alone, until she heard the soft sound of small footsteps approaching. Sophia walked slowly, her arms wrapped protectively around her daughter, Maya. The little girl's curls bounced lightly with each careful step, and in her tiny hands she clutched a handful of simple daisies. Sophia knelt by the gravestone, placing the flowers carefully on the cold marble, her hands trembling only slightly, betraying the calm determination that her face tried to hide. Her green eyes, so like Michael's, glistened with memories that Victoria had long tried to erase from her mind. Victoria's gaze locked on them immediately, and the world seemed to narrow. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. "Get that child out of here immediately," Victoria's voice cracked across the silence like a whip. "You have no right to be near my son's grave." The words were cold, sharp, precise, the weaponized arrogance she had perfected over decades. Sophia straightened slowly, cradling Maya closer. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to disturb you," she said quietly, but there was no shame in her tone, only an undercurrent of resilience that Victoria did not anticipate. Victoria froze for a heartbeat, and then her eyes widened as she studied Maya's face. Those striking green eyes, that slight tilt of the head when curious, Michael had done the same as a child. The calculations in her mind were quick, precise, unrelenting. 2 years old. Michael had died 2.5 years ago. Could it be? Her voice faltered. "How old is she?" 2 years and 3 months, Sophia replied calmly, watching Victoria's face turn pale. The realization hit Victoria like a physical blow. Michael had died without ever knowing he was a father. And now, staring at this little girl, she realized with a cold certainty that the child in front of her was likely his daughter, her granddaughter. "Did he know?" Victoria whispered, barely audible, the arrogance in her tone gone, replaced by disbelief. Sophia shook her head. "I tried to tell him. 3 times I went to his office, each time his security refused me entry. The last time, they warned me they would call the police if I returned." Victoria felt the room spin, her carefully constructed world trembling. All the power, all the control she had wielded could not undo the years of absence, the loss that had never been hers to prevent. Sophia rose, cradling Maya, her movements precise and calm. "I won't bother you anymore. I just wanted Maya to know her father, even if only like this." She started walking away, but there was no fear in her stride, only purpose. Victoria wanted to call after her, to demand answers, to regain some semblance of authority, yet a strange hesitation gripped her. Something in Sophia's eyes, in the steady way she held herself, warned that this was no longer the frightened girl she had dismissed years ago. This woman had endured, had planned, had survived, and now she moved with intention. Victoria's thoughts raced, haunted by memories she had tried to suppress. Years ago, Michael had insisted she meet Sophia at dinner. Victoria had investigated quietly and learned that Sophia was a nursing student from a modest background. Her response had been swift and absolute. She had ordered security to bar Sophia from her family, ensuring that her son would be denied even a simple chance at love. And now, as she watched Sophia disappear with Maya, Victoria felt an unfamiliar pang of helplessness. The young girl she had tried to erase from Michael's life had survived, thrived, and, most importantly, protected her child. The wind shifted again, brushing through the rows of tombstones, and Victoria remained frozen, staring at the spot where Sophia had been. The daisies on the gravestone, left by a woman who had loved her son fiercely despite the obstacles, seemed to mock her. For the first time, Victoria understood that control was an illusion when faced with the persistence of love and the careful resolve of someone who had been underestimated. Maya's small hand, tucked safely against Sophia's chest, represented a future she could not touch, a consequence she had never foreseen. As the figures disappeared into the distance, Victoria remained rooted to the spot, her mind a storm of shock, guilt, and disbelief. She had met Sophia, yes, but she had no idea that this quiet, dignified woman had spent 2 years preparing for the day when she would reclaim the justice that Victoria had denied. In the cemetery's silence, Victoria realized she had just witnessed the calm before a reckoning she could neither control nor prevent. The little girl walking ahead, unaware of the weight she carried, was the harbinger of a truth Victoria would soon have to face, a truth that would unravel everything she thought she owned. Victoria Whitmore could not stop thinking about the child's eyes, the perfect echo of her late son Michael. The encounter at the cemetery haunted her in a way no luxury, no carefully constructed schedule, no control over her empire ever had. She was used to understanding and managing everything, except this. Determined to uncover who Sophia truly was and what circumstances she and the child were living under, Victoria immediately dispatched her assistants. Detailed profiles, addresses, work histories, and financial information were requested with precision. Nothing about Sophia or Maya would remain unknown, she vowed. When the first reports arrived, Victoria leaned back in her designer chair, flipping through pages and data with the meticulous focus she had applied to business mergers and acquisitions. The reality she uncovered was far from what she expected. Sophia Johnson, Sophia now, but once a girl Victoria had dismissed, was living in a modest one-bedroom apartment in a working-class neighborhood. She was 24, a nursing graduate who had completed her studies with honors despite raising a child on her own. Her daily life was a grueling testament to perseverance. 12-hour hospital shifts, late-night cleaning jobs after classes, and a relentless juggling of bills and responsibilities, all while ensuring that Maya had food, safety, and affection. Victoria felt a pang of disbelief and a flash of irritation. How could someone from such a humble background display such relentless capability, such calculated resilience? Sophia's strength was not flashy. It was quiet, methodical, and utterly immovable. What Victoria did not know, what no amount of investigation could immediately reveal, was that Sophia had spent the past 2 years meticulously preparing for this moment. Every injustice she had suffered, every door closed in her face, every attempt to reach Michael that had been blocked, had been carefully documented. Security logs from the Whitmore estate, emails and phone records, private investigator reports paid for and then stored away, every detail was accounted for. Victoria, obsessed with uncovering Sophia's weaknesses, could only see fragments, unaware that the young woman had turned every act of exclusion, every attempt at humiliation, into an arsenal of irrefutable evidence. Sophia's preparation was aided by her ally, David Chun, a young civil rights attorney known in the community for taking pro bono cases that challenged systemic injustice. David had been her guide, her strategist, helping her organize documents, evidence, and testimony so that when the time came, she could act with precision rather than emotion. Each folder, each printout, each carefully labeled timeline represented countless hours of labor, a silent rebellion against the person who had once wielded wealth and influence to erase her from Michael's life. As Sophia explained the documents to David, pointing out the exact times security prevented her from seeing Michael, the coded threats, the emails and reports that traced Victoria's personal interference, David was impressed not only with the thoroughness but with the controlled, almost serene composure with which Sophia had compiled it all. While Victoria assumed she was orchestrating a quiet investigation of her own, Sophia was living her life openly and fully, refusing to let anger or revenge consume her. Her priority was Maya, raising her, loving her, preparing her to understand life's challenges without bitterness. Yet beneath that everyday dedication was a patient, calculated resolve. Sophia knew that when Victoria inevitably tried to assert control, She would be ready, and every interaction would be on her terms. The child, unaware of the complex chess game unfolding around her, laughed and played, and Sophia observed her with a mixture of pride and protective caution. Every action, every detail had been timed and rehearsed to ensure Maya's safety and future. Victoria, meanwhile, grew increasingly frustrated. The investigation into Sophia revealed nothing she could immediately exploit. No vulnerabilities, no mistakes, no cracks in the armor of the young nurse's carefully constructed life. Sophia was financially independent, emotionally resilient, and legally savvy, prepared for anything Victoria might attempt. The more Victoria learned, the more it became evident that this was not a woman to be dismissed or intimidated. She was an equal, possibly even a superior in terms of strategy and patience. The reality was jarring, and Victoria felt a creeping unease she could not control. Finally, driven by a mixture of curiosity, maternal instinct, and the desire to regain a semblance of control, Victoria picked up the phone and dialed Sophia's number. Each ring carried a weight of expectation and authority she had never experienced with this young woman. When Sophia answered, Victoria realized immediately that the power dynamics had shifted. Sophia's tone was measured, calm, and neutral, betraying none of the tension Victoria assumed she would feel. Victoria's request to meet Maya and discuss the child's future was met with a quiet acknowledgement, but it came with the unmistakable understanding that the meeting would be on Sophia's terms, in Sophia's time, under conditions Victoria could not dictate. As Victoria hung up, a cold awareness settled over her. She had expected compliance, uncertainty, and perhaps fear, but what she faced instead was strategy, patience, and preparation far beyond her calculations. For the first time, Victoria realized that the woman she had once dismissed, the woman who had been barred from her son's life, was not only ready, but waiting. Every move Victoria would make, every attempt at control, had already been anticipated. And in that moment, Victoria had no idea that the next encounter would determine not only her own fate, but the future of the granddaughter she had only just discovered. The park was quiet in the early morning, sunlight spilling across the playground where Maya ran freely, her laughter carrying in the crisp air. Sophia arrived with a calm precision, pushing the little girl on the swings while keeping a careful eye on the surroundings. Victoria Whitmore approached, her designer heels clicking against the paved path, projecting the same aura of authority she carried in boardrooms and social events. She expected compliance, deference, perhaps even fear. But what she encountered instead was a composed, measured Sophia, radiating quiet strength. The meeting had been arranged on Sophia's terms, as she had made clear from the outset, and Victoria immediately sensed that the power dynamic had shifted. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore," Sophia said, her voice neutral, controlled, but carrying an undercurrent of firmness that Victoria could not ignore. Victoria, forced to adjust her posture and expression, attempted a warm smile, hiding the unease gnawing at her chest. She knelt slightly to greet Maya, holding out her hands with practiced charm. The little girl paused, studying her unfamiliar grandmother, then ran past without hesitation to Sophia's side, laughter spilling again as she demanded attention for her game on the swings. Victoria's eyes flicked between child and mother, realizing instantly that charm and wealth held no power here. Victoria attempted to assert herself. "I've come to help. I can ensure Maya has everything she needs financially." Her tone carried both assurance and expectation, as if money could solve the invisible tension. Sophia did not flinch. She adjusted the strap of Maya's bag and shook her head slightly. "Money solves nothing where trust and justice are concerned," she said softly, almost conversationally, yet every word underscored the careful boundaries she had established. Victoria felt a flicker of irritation. This woman not only defied her expectations but also refused to be swayed by influence. Sophia's calm was deliberate, a tool sharpened over years of careful preparation. She guided the conversation with subtle control, steering Victoria into revealing her assumptions, her impatience, even her blind spots. Meanwhile, behind a nearby tree, Tyler Mason, Michael's longtime friend and IT ally, discreetly monitored, prepared to provide the evidence Sophia had gathered. David Chun, seated quietly on a bench with folders neatly arranged, represented the legal force that Sophia had meticulously assembled. Every move was timed, every interaction calculated, and Victoria, despite her confidence, was unaware she was playing directly into Sophia's hands. When Victoria attempted to assert control over the meeting with veiled threats of lawyers or financial leverage, Sophia remained unfazed. With a signal to David and Tyler, the next phase of the plan unfolded. Documents were revealed. Emails showing Victoria's deliberate interference, security logs detailing the repeated barring of Sophia from Michael's life, and private investigator reports paid for with company resources to undermine her. Finally, David presented the DNA results confirming that Maya was indeed Michael's daughter, Victoria's granddaughter. The calm, neutral presentation of facts struck with devastating impact. Victoria's face turned pale, the carefully constructed facade of authority faltering as reality intruded. The media arrived as planned, drawn by the orchestrated timing Sophia had ensured. Reporters, cameras, and smartphones quickly captured Victoria's attempts to assert dominance, juxtaposed against Sophia's calm composure and clear demonstration of preparedness. Questions were asked, emails referenced, and documents displayed, all evidence meticulously verified and undeniable. The public exposure of years of deliberate obstruction, of systematic prejudice cloaked in authority, left Victoria isolated and humiliated. She had expected fear or submission, yet the world witnessed her losing control in real time, her wealth and influence rendered irrelevant by proof, patience, and moral clarity. Sophia maintained her composure throughout, watching Victoria's slow realization unfold. She emphasized justice, the rights of her child, and the integrity of truth rather than personal vengeance. Her calm authority highlighted the contrast between her years of silent endurance and Victoria's sudden, desperate attempts to regain power. Maya, blissfully unaware, continued to play on the swings. Her laughter, an innocent reminder that the battle being waged around her was about protection, legacy, and moral responsibility rather than pride or wealth. As the confrontation reached its peak, Victoria finally understood the magnitude of her past actions. The years she had spent controlling, manipulating, and denying love were laid bare before a public audience. The realization struck hard. Her son had died without knowing his child, and now she faced undeniable proof of her interference. The humiliation was complete, the moral weight inescapable. And yet, as the evidence and witnesses settled around her, Victoria knew instinctively that this was not the end. The consequences of her choices were only beginning to unfold, and for the first time in her life she felt powerless to manipulate the outcome. Sophia's quiet determination remained unshaken. She had orchestrated every detail, guided every interaction, and ensured that justice, not vengeance, was served. And as Victoria Whitmore stood in the playground facing both the media and the undeniable truth, she realized that the reckoning had begun. Every attempt to control, every assumption of superiority had been anticipated and nullified. The child, the granddaughter, and the mother had emerged victorious, not through force or wealth, but through careful preparation, patience, and moral clarity. Victoria's mistakes had set the stage, and the consequences would continue to ripple far beyond the park, shaping futures in ways she had never anticipated. The weeks following the public exposure of Victoria Whitmore's actions rippled through the city with the inevitability of a storm. Whitmore Industries, once untouchable and revered for its lucrative government contracts, faced the consequences of years of unchecked authority. Clients canceled deals, shareholders panicked, and the board convened emergency sessions, realizing that the empire they had built on influence and privilege could not withstand the weight of public scrutiny. Victoria, once untouchable in her polished boardroom, was forced to resign. Diversity reforms were rapidly implemented, a gesture to salvage the company's reputation, yet more profoundly, a signal that the systemic prejudice she had wielded so effortlessly would no longer go unchallenged. She had lost control, and the realization settled over her with a suffocating weight. Sophia, in stark contrast, was thriving in a world she had painstakingly shaped through courage, strategy, and resilience. The lawsuit had not only secured justice for Maya, recognizing her legal and financial rights, but had also provided the means to create something enduring. Sophia established the Michael Whitmore Family Support Center, a foundation for single mothers, ensuring that women who might otherwise be silenced, marginalized, or dismissed could receive guidance, financial support, and advocacy. Maya grew up surrounded by a community that celebrated her existence, her laughter and curiosity no longer shadowed by the injustice that had once threatened to define her early life. Sophia's dedication to the child and the wider community demonstrated that true power lay not in dominance or wealth, but in care, preparation, and moral clarity. Victoria, meanwhile, attempted to seek reconciliation, driven partly by maternal instinct and partly by the desire to reclaim a semblance of connection. She approached Sophia months later, holding a bouquet of daisies, the same humble flowers Sophia had brought to Michael's grave, her face a mixture of humility and desperation. "I came to ask for forgiveness," Victoria said, her voice trembling, not expecting the possibility of a second chance. Sophia regarded her carefully, the years of injustice and careful preparation reflected in her composed stance. She did not reject the apology, nor did she embrace it. Instead, she conveyed a deeper lesson. "Forgiveness isn't something you ask for," Sophia said gently but firmly. "It's something earned through real change. Words alone cannot undo the past." Victoria, tearful and remorseful, understood the truth in those words. True reconciliation required more than apology. It required recognition, accountability, and transformation. Maya, now 3 years old, moved through her days as a living symbol of innocence, resilience, and hope. Her curiosity, laughter, and growing independence mirrored the love and strength Sophia had cultivated. Through the guidance of her mother and the support of the foundation, Maya experienced a childhood filled with affirmation, encouragement, and the freedom to grow without the shadows of discrimination or neglect. She represented the future Sophia had fought for, the tangible proof that patience, preparation, and moral integrity could alter the course of lives previously determined by prejudice. Every smile, every step, every playful question was a reminder that courage and justice could manifest in the smallest and most profound ways. The community around Sophia and Maya felt the impact of her efforts immediately. The support center became a hub for mentoring, education, and advocacy, influencing policies and practices far beyond the scope of the initial conflict. Other women, inspired by Sophia's journey, began to reclaim their voices, seek justice, and advocate for their children. Stories of perseverance and moral fortitude circulated, encouraging a culture in which injustice could be challenged, and ethical leadership could be celebrated over privilege. Sophia's journey from humiliation to empowerment demonstrated that the most enduring victories were not those claimed in anger or retaliation, but those meticulously planned, patiently executed, and guided by a higher sense of purpose. Victoria, isolated in her sprawling mansion, now faced the consequences of a lifetime spent valuing control and wealth over compassion and understanding. Antidepressants, sleepless nights, and the realization of lost opportunities weighed heavily on her, yet she could not alter the course of what had transpired. Maya's life, shaped by love, justice, and moral clarity, moved forward, indifferent to the previous attempts to manipulate or erase it. The contrast between the lives of Sophia and Victoria illustrated a profound truth. Privilege without responsibility could never substitute for integrity, patience, or courage. As Sophia watched Maya play in the playground of the support center, sunlight glinting off the swings and slides, she reflected on the journey from her initial humiliation to her current position of empowerment. Every decision, every document, every strategic action had been an investment in a future where Maya, and children like her, would be protected, celebrated, and given the chance to thrive. Sophia understood that the best form of justice was not revenge. It was creating a world where the vulnerable could flourish despite the obstacles imposed by those who once sought to suppress them. Michael's memory lived on, honored not through wealth or control, but through love, resilience, and the empowerment of others. The story of Sophia, Maya, and Victoria became a testament to the transformative power of patience, preparation, and unwavering moral clarity. It was a narrative that demonstrated the consequences of unchecked privilege, the strength of those who endure injustice, and the profound impact that courage and strategic action could have on the lives of the next generation. In the laughter of Maya, the success of the foundation, and the awareness that justice had been served, Sophia found fulfillment. She had turned pain into purpose, prejudice into action, and adversity into a legacy that would endure far beyond her own life. True justice, she had learned, was not immediate. It was deliberate, resilient, and guided by love.